So let's start our demonstration inside one of our latest innovations, guided sourcing. Here you see the guided sourcing notification or news feed. We can see the various events and approvals that are on my dashboard. But what I'm going to do is create an actual guided sourcing event. The guided sourcing tool is amazing in the amount of speed and efficiency it can bring to sourcing users in creating events. Here we're going to use the smart import and create an event from our template. Now, so many sourcing people end up getting their requirements in the form of messy spreadsheets that are completely unstructured. Well, inside of guided sourcing, we have the ability to drag and drop a spreadsheet like this directly into the sourcing event. And what this is going to do is intelligently analyze that content and build out the items that need to be part of our RFP. Now that we can officially import them into the draft, we can finalize our sourcing event. So if we need to adjust perhaps the duration of the event, we can do so here. We can also add our suppliers. Now for this demonstration, we're just going to select from a few simple suppliers inside our system. We can search based on their qualification status or their name, pull through a list of suppliers. And in this case here, we'll just grab quickly just 4 suppliers to be part of our bid here and go ahead and add them to their event. Now, the last component that we need is to say, are there some supplemental questions or additional information that we might need? So we can drop down into our content section and say, let's go ahead and add some questions. We can go ahead and pull them from a content library where we're reusing content from either previous events or the library itself. And we'll go ahead and just grab a couple of key terms and condition questions that we want to be part of this event and go ahead and select those. And in this way, literally in a matter of less than 2 to 3 minutes, we've created a sourcing event that's ready to publish to market. And this is a great innovation in terms of our user adoption and the efficiency that organizations can gain by adopting something like guided sourcing. Now, if we fast forward in time to the end of our sourcing event, perhaps 30 minutes later, what we can see here is the results and outcome of this particular sourcing event. Guided sourcing gives our sourcing professionals a great capability to look at the bids from each supplier and potentially decide how to make an award. But what we're going to focus in here as this portion of the demo is something that's very common when you have 16 or 20 items. Maybe a supplier that's chosen not to bid in this particular event at all. Or maybe you have specific lots and items that are in this things where certain suppliers have elected not to participate. Now, supplier participation and competitive bidding is one of the most significant contributors to price compression that procurement and supply chain professionals rely on. So if participation in certain events starts to drop, particularly when you're using something like guided sourcing, where you might be able to run hundreds and hundreds of more events, and you need to be able to start to understand who is participating or not participating. In a classical Ariba dashboard, we might be able to see some of these trends in participation, but we do not necessarily get a lot of feedback as to why suppliers are not participating. And we know our sourcing professionals, even if we had all those comments and feedback, might not have time to read it all. So if we look at scaling up a world-class operation in terms of sourcing and procurement, this is where Qualtrics comes in. Over on the Qualtrics dashboard, you can see that we've pulled in the operational data from the Ariba platform in the top line here. And we see a clear dip in our participation, both by region and by category, particularly in this area of touchscreen displays. Now, behind the scenes, what Qualtrics is doing is publishing a survey at the end of every bid, asking the supplier why they participated, why they did not, and collecting their feedback. By repeating this process over and over again and feeding it into the Qualtrics natural language processing engine, we have the ability to mine this information to learn about not what is happening, but why this isn't happening. If we look at the supplier experience data, particularly the Qualtrics topics and summarization engine, we can see that the use of thin film transistor screens is frequently mentioned as an overwhelmingly negative subject by suppliers. If we shift over to the word cloud, we can see parsed in that words like display and product and specification are behind what the suppliers are telling us about their participation in our sourcing events in this particular category. The beauty of Qualtrics is that we can filter down to the specific area and take a deep look at the actual supplier comments, that we are closing down these facilities, we're moving to LED production. And that tells me as a category manager that I can't negotiate or source my way out of this. I've got to go back to my organization and talk about our product specifications and their alignment to the market. Having taken a look at how Qualtrics supplier experience management can apply to sourcing, let's pivot over and start to talk about how it can be applied to the world of contracts. Inside of Ariba, we have the ability to manage the contract process and provide a lot of great efficiencies. Let's take a look at contracts in the light of one particular step, and that is buyer-supplier negotiation. We know Ariba has the ability to manage multiple rounds of negotiation as part of a contract development activity. And we can see here a contract that's been through roughly 5 rounds of negotiations, and Ariba is doing a fantastic job of keeping track of each revision, the supplier's comments back and forth, driving that process control, keeping standard templates in place, and creating that audit trail for the activity that's going to produce the final contract. Now the question is, even though this activity is heavily automated, is this efficient and does it represent a world-class contracting practice? Now we can turn to our Ariba dashboards and see exactly what clauses are being edited and modified. But to get to the core of why suppliers are objecting to these clauses, this is where Qualtrics comes in. As we look again at the Qualtrics contracting dashboard, we've imported contract negotiation cycle time broken down by region from Ariba, and we can see that there's a challenge inside the European region, which is taking longer to negotiate than other regions. And the question is why? Again, by pushing a supplier survey at the end of each negotiation, we can collect feedback. Based on this feedback, you can see the word cloud from Qualtrics indicating which phrases are mentioned most often by suppliers. Panning over, we can see the indemnification is most mentioned and largely negative in sentiment. If we were to now select indemnification as the key phrase, we can actually see inside of Qualtrics the feedback on that subject area inside of Qualtrics, allowing us to go to legal potentially and ask for a fallback clause to streamline negotiations. So we've seen 2 examples, one for sourcing, one for contracts, where supplier experience management can complement and augment and improve the procurement processes enabled by Ariba.